August 1944. The war in Europe is reaching a critical point. The Allies broke through the German defenses in Normandy, but got stuck in the bloody fighting. Every day is measured by hundreds of dead. Every mile is won at the cost of incredible losses. But there is one general who thinks otherwise. General George Patton is a legendary combat commander with unpredictable tactics and an iron will. His idea is simple, but insane. Not to wait, not to consolidate, but on the contrary, to move so fast that the enemy won't even be able to figure out where you are. This is a story about how one man redesigned modern warfare, about risk and courage, about what happens when a military commander decides to ignore all the rules. Part 1. Developing a plan. The atmosphere at the Allied headquarters in Versailles was tense. On the huge table was a map of Normandy, covered with markings of the troops' positions. 2 months of fighting did not lead to the desired breakthrough. The American, British, and Canadian units advanced at a snail's pace, overcoming the natural obstacles of the French landscape, the hedges of the Normandy fields, which the Germans used for their defensive positions. General Dwight D. Eisenhower, the commander-in-chief of the Allied forces, studied every calculated move. His subordinates, experienced officers, offered various options for the development of the situation. American General Omar Bradley pointed to the map and presented an operation called Cobra. A massive airstrike was supposed to make a gap in the German lines, after which armored columns would rush into the resulting hole in the enemy's defenses.
The plans were logical, built according to classical military canons. Strike, create a breakthrough, consolidate positions, then slowly and methodically move forward. Any military academic would approve of this approach. But at that moment, a British officer entered the room with an emergency message. The Third Army has just been activated. Its commander is General George Patton. Patton sent a brief but shocking message. He intended to capture the Brittany Peninsula in just 4 days and then turn east towards Paris. Previously, no one had even thought about such a pace of attack. It wasn't just aggression, it was a violation of all known principles of military logistics. Eisenhower read the message several times. Bradley was shocked. You see, Brittany is more than 100 miles away from the positions that the Americans have just captured. Most of this territory was still controlled by the Germans. An army that starts moving at this speed runs the risk of severing its own supply lines, being surrounded by the enemy, and being completely destroyed. Eisenhower picked up the phone and demanded to be put through to Patton immediately. He picked up the phone almost instantly, as if he already knew the call was coming. "George, I have your plan in my hands," Eisenhower began. "You want to advance 100 miles in 4 days through enemy territory. This is completely impossible by all standards."
Patton didn't blink. "Sir, I know this sounds incredible, but now is a unique opportunity. The Germans are disorganized. Their command system is partially destroyed. If we move now while they're confused, we can capture Brittany before they can muster forces to defend themselves. Each hour of delay is an hour during which the enemy regains its combat potential." Part 2. A logistical nightmare. The commanders of the logistics units got into a real nightmare when trying to ensure such an unprecedented offensive. Armies usually move with caution, with well-organized supply lines, fuel depots, ammunition, and provisions behind them. Patton tossed this approach aside. His chief supply officer came to him with the bad news. During the 4 days of continuous offensive, fuel reserves were rapidly depleted. At the current rate of consumption, they would have been completely depleted in 36 hours. Patton listened and issued an order that would have seemed crazy to any logistics specialist with 20 years of experience. First, he ordered the fuel supply to be cut to all vehicles that were not directly involved in the fighting. The staff trucks could drive slower or even stay in place. Every drop of gasoline had to go into battle tanks and combat vehicles. Secondly, he instructed his units to seize German fuel depots and use German fuel in their vehicles. Thirdly, he ordered the fuel to be drained from damaged German tanks and wrecked enemy vehicles.
It was logistics on the move, an improvised tactic that had no precedent. They taught in military academies that it is absolutely impossible to do this, but Patton didn't care. He only knew one thing: stop your troops and they won't be able to win. Keep moving and you will become an unpredictable and elusive opponent for the enemy. His orders were distributed to all divisions. Don't stop under any circumstances. If you run out of fuel, take German fuel. If there is no ammunition, use the captured ones. Movement is life. Stopping is death. Tank battalion commanders reported to each other on the progress records. The first day is 20 miles. The second day is 30 miles. The third day is 40 miles. The German command fell into a panic. Where is Patton's army? It became the most pressing issue in the German headquarters. Scouts reported his presence here and there, but by the time the Germans tried to organize a counteroffensive, Patton's army was already in a completely different place. Part 3. The race for an advance. The city of Avanches represented a critical strategic point. If the Germans had been able to establish protection there, they would have blocked access to the Brittany Peninsula. This would mean that the American offensive would be stuck in even heavier fighting. Patton didn't give them that chance. His 4th Panzer Division arrived at Avanches before German reinforcements arrived there. The city was captured within a few hours with virtually no organized resistance. The gates to Brittany were open. "Brittany is ours," Patton announced to his staff. "We're going right through it." His chief of staff timidly objected. "Sir, maybe we should end operations in the current area, tighten supply lines, let infantry divisions catch up." "No," Patton snapped. "Consolidation means time, and time is what we give to the enemy. While we are standing still, the Germans are organizing new defensive lines. While they are disorganized, we are advancing."
His 4th and 6th Panzer Divisions rushed into Brittany. The infantry divisions followed them. In 48 hours, 3 full divisions raced along the roads of Brittany at such a speed that trucks with ammunition, fuel, and food were left far behind. At the Allied headquarters in Versailles, officers stared at the map in disbelief. "That can't be true," said one British officer. "These position marks may not be accurate. The Third Army is physically incapable of being so far ahead." "I've checked 3 times," the intelligence officer replied. "Patton is exactly where it is shown on the map, and he keeps moving." Part 4. Rush and Glory. By the 4th of August, the Third Army had achieved the impossible. The 4th Panzer Division occupied Rennes. The 6th Panzer Division was approaching Brest. Infantry units controlled all the key roads in eastern Brittany. In 4 days, Patton covered the distance they planned to spend 2 weeks covering. When Eisenhower saw the position report, he initially thought it was an intelligence error. It is impossible for all these marks to be reliable. But upon rechecking, all the data was confirmed. General George Patton and his Third Army were already there. He did it. He really did it. Bradley stood next to the map and shook his head in disbelief. "We planned that it would take at least 2 weeks. He did it in 4 days. How is this possible?" The answer was simple and complicated at the same time. Patton refused to accept that something was impossible. When he was told that this pace of attack was not feasible, he carried it out. When he was assured that the supply lines would not be able to provide such a rate of advance, he found a way to ensure it. When he was ordered to slow down and strengthen his positions, on the contrary, he accelerated.
Eisenhower sent Patton a message. "Congratulations on achieving your goals ahead of schedule. An exceptional achievement. However, you are critically short of fuel right now. I recommend that they consolidate their positions until the supply lines are tightened." Patton replied an hour later. "I recognize the fuel shortage. However, the German positions in Lorient and Saint-Nazaire are still not occupied. We intend to capture them before the enemy attracts reinforcements. We'll solve the supply problem later." Eisenhower read this message and laughed, a tired, incredulous laugh. A general without fuel wants to continue the attack.
It was either genius or suicide, maybe both at the same time. Part 5. The German Reaction. Panic reigned in the headquarters of the German 7th Army. General Paul Hauser received reports about the American offensive and refused to believe it. Did Patton make more than 100 miles in 4 days? It's impossible. No army can move at such a speed. It must be an intelligence mistake. But the intelligence officer insisted. We have confirmed through several independent sources. American forces are in Rennes, approaching Brest, and controlling Brittany. This is Patton. It must be Patton. Hauser sat down heavily on a chair. If Patton is in Brittany, then the entire western flank of the German defense is exposed. He could turn east and be in the rear of the German lines within a few days. The German commander realized that he did not have enough forces to defend all directions at the same time. "Fall back," Hauser finally ordered. "We are establishing defensive positions further east. We can't stop Patton's advance. We can only try to contain him." It was a tacit surrender of the initiative. The Germans stopped attacking. They began to retreat. They stopped directing the fighting. They started reacting to it. And reacting to Patton meant always being one step behind.
Part 6. An Unexpected Turn. Having captured most of Brittany, Patton did something that the Germans did not expect at all. He turned his army 90 degrees. Instead of continuing the offensive to the west to capture the major ports of the peninsula, he deployed his entire army from west to east and rushed to Paris and further to Germany. "Sir," his chief of staff protested, "we have not completed operations in Brittany. Brest and Lorient are major port cities. We have to capture them." "The ports," Patton said absently, "don't matter if we win the war. Paris matters. Germany matters. We're going east." Within 48 hours, the Third Army, consisting of 4 corps, totaling more than 200,000 effective combat soldiers and officers, changed direction by 90 degrees and rushed east. The maneuver was logistically insane. A 90-degree turn of the full army during the already underway offensive was supposed to cause chaos, traffic jams, and disruption of the supply system. But Patton's staff, through will, determination, and desperate improvisation, made it work. By the 10th of August, the Third Army was already rushing towards Le Mans, then towards the Seine River, and then towards the German border. Patton asked his supply officer, "How far can we go?" "Sir," the officer replied timidly, "we are already beyond the minimum necessary supply distance. If we save all non-essential expenses, seize German supplies, and if every truck of fuel runs non-stop, maybe we'll get to the German border." "Maybe not enough," Patton said. "Then we'll get to the German border."
Part 7. The Eisenhower Dilemma. By August 12th, Eisenhower was facing a crisis of command. The advance of the Third Army was so rapid that it threatened to destroy the entire coordinated Allied strategy. Patton has advanced so far that his flanks are completely exposed. If he crosses the River Seine, Bradley reported, he will be 75 miles ahead of the rest of the army. His flanks will be completely open for a counteroffensive. British Field Marshal Bernard Montgomery, who participated in strategic meetings by telephone, was furious. "This is madness. Patton violates all the principles of organized warfare. His supply lines are stretched to the breaking point. One German counteroffensive and the Third Army could be cut off and completely destroyed." Bradley agreed that Patton was taking a huge risk. The military doctrine is unequivocal. Never allow your troops to move faster than they can be secured. Never leave your flanks exposed. Never break the connection with the main forces. Patton was breaking all these rules at the same time. Eisenhower picked up the phone and called Patton directly. "George, you're 60 miles ahead of schedule. You have exceeded your supply capacity. You have both flanks open." "I know, sir," Patton replied calmly. "Then why shouldn't I order you to stop?" "Because the Germans are broken, sir, defeated. If we give them time to recover, they'll build new defensive lines, and we'll fight for every mile."
But if we keep pushing now while they are in chaos, we may be in Germany before they recover. We can end this war months earlier." "At what price?" Eisenhower asked. "If you overestimate your capabilities and get cut off, you may lose the entire army." "Risk is part of the war, sir. The question is whether we are willing to take tactical risks for strategic gain."
Eisenhower closed his eyes. Patton was right. There was an opportunity, but there was also a danger. Finally, the commander-in-chief made a decision. "George, I'm not telling you to stop, but I also don't give you complete freedom of action. You can advance as far as the fuel allows, but as soon as you can't maintain your position, you stop immediately." "Understood, sir." When Eisenhower hung up, Bradley asked, "Did you just give Patton permission to go as far as he wants?" "No," Eisenhower replied. "I gave him permission to move forward until the fuel runs out. According to my calculations, this will happen in about 3 days, and then we'll see if Patton can perform another miracle." Part 8. Crossing the Seine. By August 19th, the Third Army had reached the River Seine, and this happened weeks earlier than the schedule of operations suggested. German troops were trying to set up defenses on the opposite shore. Patton didn't give them time for that. His engineers began hastily constructing crossings. Tanks crossed the river in places with shallow water. The infantry used captured German pontoons and boats. In 36 hours, the main forces of the Third Army were already on the east bank. "Impossible," the German commander muttered when he received the report on the crossing. "Patton can't be on the other side of the Seine by now. We just confirmed that he's 50 miles from the river." "That was yesterday," said his adjutant. "He moved 50 miles in 1 day."
At the Allied headquarters, Eisenhower gathered his officers. "Gentlemen, the Third Army crossed the Seine River on August 19th. According to our original schedule, she was supposed to arrive there by mid-September. Patton is 4 weeks ahead of schedule." The room fell silent. "This means," Eisenhower continued, "that we are 4 weeks closer to the end of this war. This means thousands of lives saved, cities that will not be destroyed, months of suffering that can be avoided." He glanced at the map, where the arrows indicating the positions of the Third Army were already pointing in the direction of Germany. "I didn't think it was possible," Eisenhower confessed, "but George proved me wrong." Part 9. On the edge of the possible. By the 25th of August, the Third Army had stopped, but not because of the German resistance. The reason was more boring and sadder. The fuel ran out. The tanks literally ran out of gas. Entire divisions stopped solely because there was nothing to feed them. Patton, who had dreamed of seeing the German border, was trapped in his own triumph. "Sir," the supply officer reported with a frustrated face, "we're completely out of fuel. No reserves, nothing. We're static until the supply trucks arrive." Patton exploded with rage, but not at his men. His anger was directed at the situation as a whole. How long? Maybe 3 days, maybe a week. Depends on what priority we get in the supply chain. 1 week? Roared Patton. "In a week, the Germans have been rebuilding their defensive positions. We could be in Germany right now if we had fuel."
He immediately called Eisenhower. "Sir, I need fuel. Every drop that you can isolate. The Third Army is sitting on the German border, and we can't move." "I know, George," Eisenhower replied, "but fuel is limited. Montgomery demands priority for his operation." "Sir," shouted Patton, "I am 75 miles from the Rhine. Give me the fuel intended for Montgomery, and I can cross the river in 3 days. We have a chance to end this war in 1944, before winter sets in, before the Germans regain their strength, but only if we move now." The discussion lasted 10 minutes. Finally, Eisenhower made a decision that historians would debate for decades. "I'm giving priority to Montgomery's operation. I'm sorry, George, but this is my decision." Patton hung up the phone. He sat in silence for a long moment.
Then he turned to his staff. Collect every drop of fuel you can find. We are not stopping, not when we're so close. 10. Forced break. During September, the Third Army sat motionless, burning with frustration. Her soldiers could see the German positions right in front of them. They were incredibly close to the Reich itself, but without fuel, they couldn't move. It was like standing at the finish line and not having permission to cross it. Patton visited the frontline units, trying to maintain morale. "We'll get the fuel," he promised, "and when we get it, we'll go straight to Berlin." But there was bitterness in his private diary entries. "We could have ended this war by Christmas. The Germans were on the run. All we needed was fuel. But instead we stopped, and now they will have time to recover. This delay will cost thousands of lives."
History will debate whether Patton was right, whether prioritizing his fuel would have changed the course of the war, and whether the risks were acceptable. But historians won't dispute one thing. In August 1944, Patton moved the Third Army 100 miles in 48 hours, crossed France in 3 weeks, and reached the German border months ahead of schedule. And when Eisenhower saw how far Patton had come, he uttered 5 words that contained both admiration and disbelief. "Oh my God, he's already there."